Welcome to Numismatics Hub, your ultimate destination for fascinating stories, rare coin discoveries, and all things numismatics. Join us as we explore the world of currency and uncover hidden treasures one coin at a time. There's a certain quiet magic in the things we overlook. A penny, for example, so small and ordinary that we often ignore it when it glints on the sidewalk. But every now and then, one of those humble coins turns out to carry a secret, a story, and even a fortune. One such tale lies in the 1996 United States 1-cent penny, an unassuming coin with a rich backstory and a present-day value that could leave even seasoned collectors speechless. It was a year of transition. The world buzzed with the excitement of the approaching new millennium. The Olympics were lighting up Atlanta. DVDs were making their first entrance into the world of home entertainment. The internet was just starting to sneak into homes, and people were logging on with dial-up modems, fascinated by the infinite possibilities of the World Wide Web. Amid all this change, in the quiet and meticulous corridors of the U.S. Mint, a familiar coin was pressed into history again, though not just any coin. This was the 1996 Lincoln 1-cent penny, a continuation of a series that had run for decades, yet it carried with it the weight of American history, identity, and craftsmanship. The penny's face was familiar. Abraham Lincoln, America's 16th president, whose solemn, thoughtful gaze had looked out from the front of this coin since 1909. That image, designed by Victor David Brenner, was more than just a portrait. It was a cultural symbol, a piece of enduring Americana. The design had seen only modest changes over the years, but its staying power was undeniable. In 1996, it retained its classic feel, offering a bridge between generations, a quiet link between past and present. The reverse still bore the image of the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo and first used in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Though simple in its composition, the design was layered with meaning. Peer closely enough at the fine lines and tiny columns, and you could see the statue of Lincoln seated within, just like in the real memorial in Washington, D.C. It was artistry in miniature, a reminder that even a 1-cent coin could tell a story of national pride and remembrance. But even stories embedded in metal are influenced by the details of how they're made. The 1996 penny was struck at multiple mints, with two primary variations: those marked with a D for the Denver Mint and those with no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia. The Denver issues were precise and abundant, but within the sea of pennies that year, there were a few anomalies, unexpected variations, subtle errors, and rare features that would become the holy grail for collectors. Some coins bore double dies, small but unmistakable duplications in the letters or numbers of the coin, caused when the die used to strike the coin shifted ever so slightly. Others displayed off-center strikes or weak impressions of the mint mark. These variations, while invisible to the average eye, represented opportunities. A seemingly regular penny could be anything but, and the thrill of discovering such a rarity was part of what made coin collecting an enduring passion. Then, there was the matter of condition. Most pennies passed from hand to hand, jostled in pockets, and dropped in drawers, accumulated scratches, wear, and the dull patina of everyday use. But a few, just a few, survived in pristine condition. These were the coins that had been saved in mint sets, sealed away from the rough world, their sharp edges and glossy luster perfectly preserved. Among collectors, these high-grade specimens were golden tickets. To understand the value of the 1996 penny, one must also understand its place in the broader landscape of numismatics. The late 20th century was not typically a hotbed for ultra-rare coins. The mint was producing coins in the billions, and scarcity was rare by design. Yet within that immense production run, there existed minute differences, anomalies, and pristine examples that bucked the trend. Somewhere along the line, a particular 1996 penny, flawless, gleaming, and bearing a rare die error, emerged from obscurity. It passed through the hands of a few careful observers, each realizing its potential a little more clearly. Eventually, it was graded by a top-tier coin grading service, receiving an MS-70 grade, indicating a perfect mint state. Even more astonishing, it featured a double die reverse, a rarity nearly unknown in the 1996 series. When this coin finally made its way to auction, it attracted attention from across the globe. Seasoned numismatists, hobbyists, and investors alike were drawn in by the sheer improbability of its condition and characteristics. Bidding was fierce, each new offer pushing the envelope further, driven by passion, strategy, and the allure of owning something truly one of a kind. And when the final gavel fell, the price stunned even the most optimistic collector. This unassuming 1996 1-cent penny, born from a year lost in transition, crafted with care, and preserved against all odds, had sold for a jaw-dropping $187,000. A coin worth 1 cent, now worth more than some homes. Its stories, like this, they give everyday objects meaning beyond their purpose. The 1996 penny reminds us that history doesn't always sit in museums or vaults. It's often hiding in plain sight. In your change jar, at the bottom of an old drawer, or tucked into a forgotten book, there might be something extraordinary waiting to be found. That's the wonder of coins. Each one tells a story. And sometimes, those stories are worth more than you could ever imagine. In a world where attention turns so quickly to the newest and shiniest things, it's easy to overlook what seems ordinary. The clink of a penny in a pocket, the soft thud as it's tossed onto a dresser or forgotten in a jar. It's one of the most familiar sounds in America. But sometimes, the most common objects hold the rarest secrets. Such is the case with the 1985 United States 1-cent coin. A penny, yes, but not just any penny. This particular cent, minted in Denver during a seemingly unremarkable year, carries a story that stretches from factory floors to collectors' showcases, and eventually to the auction blocks where legends are born. A coin born from copper-plated zinc, now commanding a value so astonishing that it stops seasoned coin enthusiasts in their tracks. The year 1985 wasn't especially dramatic for coinage. The United States was continuing its modern coin production with a focus on efficiency, volume, and uniformity. Ronald Reagan sat in the Oval Office, presiding over a country in the midst of a technological and cultural shift. It was the age of VHS tapes and Walkmans, of Cold War tensions and economic recalibration. Somewhere in the middle of all that movement, the Denver Mint pressed out billions of pennies, each carrying the face of a president long gone but never forgotten. That face, Abraham Lincoln, had graced the penny since 1909. Sculpted with precision by Victor David Brenner, Lincoln's portrait remained a staple of American coinage for decades. His stern, thoughtful expression, accented by the detail in his cheekbones, beard, and eyes, became an icon. The 1985 penny preserved this tradition with precision, placing Lincoln's profile confidently on the obverse, just as it had been for more than 75 years. The reverse side showcased the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, featuring intricate lines and columns that, if you looked closely enough, revealed the tiny seated figure of Lincoln himself inside the temple, an elegant, often unnoticed detail that brought the coin to life. By 1982, the composition of the penny had changed from 95% copper to a core of 99.2% zinc, coated with a thin layer of pure copper. This change, driven by the rising cost of copper, gave the coin a lighter feel and made it slightly more prone to minting errors. For collectors, these errors weren't flaws, they were opportunities. It's within this transition era, just a few years after the metal composition changed, that the 1985 penny gained unexpected fame. Minted in Denver, the D mark sits just below the date, small and often overlooked. But collectors knew to pay close attention. The Denver Mint was known for its speed and volume, churning out coins for circulation across the western half of the United States. In that kind of environment, it wasn't uncommon for slight die issues, misalignments, or planchet anomalies to slip through the cracks. And when billions of coins are made, even rare errors can exist in relatively significant numbers, if only you know where to look. The 1985 penny drew attention when collectors began spotting subtle but significant errors in a limited number of coins. Some featured a double die, with the lettering on Liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust," showing ghost-like echoes of duplication. Others had off-center strikes that pushed Lincoln's head toward the rim or caused part of the memorial on the reverse to disappear. A few coins had weakly struck or missing mint marks. And in one famously rare case, a coin surfaced with both an off-center strike and a strong double die, an extreme rarity that changed the game for this otherwise ordinary year. But error wasn't the only attraction. Condition played a major role in the coin's rise in value. Most 1985 D pennies ended up in circulation, bouncing between vending machines and glove boxes, scraped and dulled by life's everyday grind. A few, however, were spared. Kept in bank rolls, sealed in mint sets, or tucked away by collectors who somehow knew their future worth, these coins remained in brilliant uncirculated condition. It was from these pockets of preservation that the true gems began to emerge. One such gem made headlines when it was submitted to a top-tier grading service and returned with an MS-70 grade, mint state perfection. Not a scratch, not a blemish, no mark to detract from its flawless shine. To achieve MS-70, a coin must be struck with precision, handled with care, and stored without exposure to wear or damage of any kind. And when a 1985 D penny achieved this, combined with a recognized die error, it became a unicorn in the numismatic world. The buzz in collector circles grew. Forums lit up. Auction houses began whispering about it. Quiet interest turned to fierce competition. When this particular coin finally hit the public auction scene, the bidding was intense. Veteran collectors, high-end investors, and dealers all wanted a piece of history. The final hammer price? An incredible $178,000. A penny, just a penny, had reached heights reserved for gold coins, rare dollar bills, and museum-grade relics. That sale transformed the narrative around the 1985 D penny. It was no longer just change at the bottom of a drawer. It was a potential treasure. Coin dealers began combing through bags of pennies. Metal detectors searched parks and fields with renewed purpose. Collectors revisited their old folders, reevaluating what they had once thought common. Because the possibility, however rare, was real. One cent could become six figures. All it took was the right combination of condition, rarity, and a little bit of history. The appeal wasn't just financial. The 1985 D penny represented something bigger, a reminder that the everyday items we take for granted can have stories, secrets, and incredible value. It symbolized the thrill of discovery, the importance of detail, and the power of preservation. And for those who found one, or even just dreamed of it, the experience was unforgettable. As time passes, fewer high-grade 1985 D pennies remain in the wild. Those that were once missed or tossed into circulation are being plucked out, graded, and absorbed into private collections, never to return. That scarcity only drives the value higher. So when you next find a penny and see that tiny D under the date 1985, take a second look. Run your fingers across the edge. Study the lines, the luster, the lettering. You might just be holding a piece of hidden history. And maybe, just maybe, it's worth more than you ever imagined. It began like so many others, pressed into existence beneath the deafening roar of machinery, warmed by the heat of Denver's relentless minting floor, and destined for circulation, to be passed from hand to hand with barely a thought. The 1985 1-cent penny, stamped with a small D to signify its Denver birth, never expected to stand out. It wasn't born of precious metal or minted with ceremonial flair. It bore no promise of fortune or spectacle. It was a simple penny, humble, small, and seemingly unremarkable. And yet, decades later, this unassuming copper-plated coin would become the centerpiece of astonishment, sought after by collectors and appraisers alike, climbing its way into a value tier no one had anticipated. How it reached such heights is a tale layered in history, mystery, and the magic that only time can lend to objects long overlooked. The mid-1980s was a curious time in America. The economy was recovering, pop culture was exploding, and the technological tide was starting to rise. And while society charged ahead into a neon-colored future, the U.S. Mint continued its steady task, producing coins by the billions to fuel the commerce of everyday life. In 1985, the penny was no longer the solid copper coin it had been in generations past. Since 1982, it had transitioned to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, a shift driven by the rising cost of materials. To the naked eye, it looked the same. It carried the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, facing right, his profile resolute and dignified. It bore the same inscriptions, "In God We Trust," arching above his head, "Liberty," to his left, and the date, 1985, on his right. Beneath that year was the mint mark that quietly denoted its Denver origin, a single, understated D. What most people didn't realize is that this change in composition introduced a slew of new complexities. The new zinc-based pennies were softer and more susceptible to errors during the striking process. And while the U.S. Mint strives for perfection, the sheer scale of production, billions of coins each year, means that errors, anomalies, and inconsistencies inevitably slip through the cracks. To the average person, these imperfections meant nothing. But to numismatists, the meticulous enthusiasts who study and collect coins, these were opportunities. Opportunities to discover, to preserve, and eventually to profit. The 1985 penny is no stranger to these minting irregularities. While it might not immediately dazzle the eye, subtle variations can turn a single specimen into a priceless relic. In some cases, the coin's die was slightly misaligned, resulting in off-center strikes where Lincoln's head edged closer to the rim, or where the words appeared doubled or blurred. In rare instances, planchet flaws, caused when the metal blank was improperly formed, created ripples or bubbles beneath the surface. And in extremely rare scenarios, a coin could feature a strong doubled die, where letters like "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" appear twice, almost like a ghostly echo of themselves. It was one such error coin that first caught the attention of serious collectors. A 1985 deep penny surface that defied expectations. Though small and copper-colored like the rest, it bore all the hallmarks of something special. It had never seen circulation. Its surfaces gleamed with the luster of a freshly minted coin. Under magnification, the letters showed a distinct doubling. The die that had struck it must have shifted ever so slightly between impacts. And the coin had survived the sorting, bagging, shipping, and spending that would have dulled its perfection. It was, in every sense, a miracle of preservation. Grading agencies took notice. The coin was submitted to a professional service and returned with an elite rating, MS-70. Mint state perfection. It was as if time had paused the moment it left the press. No scratches. No nicks. No dullness. And with that combination of flawless preservation and rare minting anomaly, its fate was sealed. Collectors vied for it. Dealers courted it. And when it finally came to auction, the world watched. The final bid stunned even seasoned professionals. $166,000. A single penny, smaller than a thumb, lighter than a paperclip, had become a six-figure treasure. From that moment on, the 1985 penny was never viewed the same way again. Coin collectors began re-examining their collections. Newcomers to the hobby poured over pocket change with newfound intensity. Could another one be out there? Could lightning strike twice? With over 5 billion one-cent coins minted in 1985, the odds seemed slim, but tantalizingly real. Even a whisper of a similar error could set off a frenzy. But for those who understand the true value of coins, the monetary number, however jaw-dropping, is only one part of the story. The coin's appeal lies not just in its price tag, but in its symbolism. This penny is a bridge between eras. It links the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln with the mechanized world of modern minting. It represents the turning point in materials, from copper to zinc. It reflects the meticulous craftsmanship of engravers like Victor David Brenner, who never could have imagined that his 1909 portrait would live on in such a way over 75 years later. And it encapsulates the thrill of numismatics, the idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary under just the right conditions. Today, more than ever, coins like the 1985 penny remind us to look closer at the everyday. To see that within each small object, each glint of metal passed casually from hand to hand, there lies a story. Some stories are common, uneventful. But others, rare, precious, are still waiting to be discovered. Whether hidden in jars on dusty shelves, rolled up in forgotten drawers, or rattling around in the cup holder of an old car, the next great treasure could be just a penny away, And for the 1985 penny that once would have bought you nothing more than a piece of gum, it now stands as a symbol of how value is more than just monetary. It's historical, it's artistic, and it's deeply personal. It is proof that the past is never as far away as it seems. And sometimes, it fits perfectly in the palm of your hand.